I'm John Corcoran, currently editor of two monthly trade magazines, the two leading ones in the field, Martial Arts Success magazine, that's attached to the Martial Arts Industry Association, and Martial Arts Professional, that's the official publication of the National Association of Professional Martial Artists. Farabor's asked me in this interview if I'd give you some background information. Most people just know me as a writer because I've been writing and editing magazines and the author of books now for 33 years. But I started in karate right out of high school at age 18 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1967. And what inspired my interest was seeing a James Bond film called You Only Live Twice that had been shot in Japan, and which featured Masoyama's, some of his black belt experts breaking, doing spectacular break stunts, and there were ninjas in it and sword masters, and all authentic. So that's what ignited my interest. The following week I went out and signed up for karate lessons. I started in an Okinawan style, changed to a different Okinawan style about 2 years later, which was Shorin-ryu, and that style suited me very well. And ultimately, I got my black belt, earned my black belt in 1972 in Okinawan Shorin-ryu karate. And years later, I sought out Joe Louis. That's the legendary heavyweight karate and kickboxing champion. We became friends and later roommates for 4 years. And so in 1977, I became a protege of Joe's, and Joe is still my main martial arts mentor to this day. This is 2007. That sort of capsulizes all my training, because once I moved to Los Angeles from Pittsburgh in 1973, I quit competing and pursued a writing career. And as fate would have it, I became the first black belt to become an assistant editor of Black Belt magazine. And I was considered really unique at the time. Most of the editors there were former newspaper or mainstream magazine editors whose hearts weren't really into the martial arts, and nobody had my level of expertise or knowledge of the field. So it took me less than 6 months to have earn a national reputation as a writer and editor in the martial arts field. That was my dream job, and as I said in the beginning, I'm still doing it today. And just to capsulize that in terms of what I've done, I've been editor of altogether about 24 national or international martial arts magazines, starting with Black Belt in 1973. And as a freelancer, I was the first American journalist to syndicate my articles in foreign language magazines, martial arts magazines, all over the world. I think ultimately my articles back in the late 70s were published in 7 different languages and probably easily over 100 countries. I think it was about 120 countries worldwide. So that was the beginning of my global reputation. And then in 1977, I wrote my first book. And what made that unique was it was picked up by a major New York publisher, Simon & Schuster. Most books at that time were how-to books, and even the ones written by the great grandmasters were typically published by small publishers. So when I made the deal and got with a major publisher, the big difference was they have massive distribution. And I had no competition because mine was a simple question and answer book, but it was a reference book. Most books written about the martial arts in that period of time were how-to instructional books. So they were just filled with photos and captions practically and no text. My books were very text heavy. And like I said, once I started with that as a reference book, the next book that came out had taken me 10 years from concept to completion, and that's the original martial arts encyclopedia. And that is still on the market in places today. It was published in 1983, and the reason it took 10 years because I did so much original research with my co-author of that book, and it was global in scope. And nobody had ever done anything of that magnitude before, and it was the pre-computer era. I'm sure if I started that book today and did it on a computer, instead of taking 10 years, it would take me 3, and maybe less, because today you have the internet. Back then, we had very few reference books in the English language that were legitimate, with legitimate facts in them that you could draw from. So this was a huge undertaking. And today that book is looked upon, the encyclopedia, as the book when you want knowledge about the pioneers, period. Because the cutoff date in that was about 1980. So we got everything, all the rich histories all over the world, and by 1,000 biographies in that one book, but they were all cut off at 1980. And it would be a monumental undertaking just to update the book, so that's never going to happen. So we call it today the Pioneers book. And that gave me a really strong global reputation. Since that time, I have done now, with those first 2 books, 9 other martial arts books or manuals, and altogether, collectively, my books have sold about 400,000 copies worldwide. So that's not a short nutshell, but as concise as I can make it, that was my background, my training as a martial artist. That was my writing career in a nutshell. And Forobor's asked me what's my prediction for the future. Well, all of us happen to be sitting here right now at one of the greatest eras in martial arts history, and that's because mixed martial arts, the sport, driven by the Ultimate Fighting Championship folks, is now becoming so big and mainstream, it is growing disproportionately by leaps and bounds every month. Something is happening with that sport, where it's driving it to the mass market stronger and stronger and stronger. Mixed martial arts is right now easily the fastest growing professional sport in the world. And we're only scratching the surface, according to Dana White, the president of the UFC. And what I like and I see in this future here, they're not using professional boxing as their business model. In fact, they are doing everything opposite of professional boxing, because pro boxing has been rocked with scandals and corruption for 100 years. So it was due to be passed up by some kind of combat sport, the right people with the right thing at the right time, and that's mixed martial arts. So what I see for the future, God knows where these people are going to go, but I can tell you their superstar athletes are millionaires. Last year, 1 year ago in 2006, one of their champions fought a title fight and got a piece of the gate and made the first $1 million purse in all of martial sports worldwide in our history. So now all of their champions in one way or another are making 7 figures a year. And the sport, like I said, only broke through to the mainstream recently. So not only do I see big superstars in this sport ever growing in popularity, but I see it being filtered into the martial arts schools to integrate with your curriculum in a safe way. And I don't mean that you're going to have your kids grounding and pounding each other, but they're certainly going to learn the grappling as well as the stand-up skills overall that are used. And that's pieces of kickboxing, pieces of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, pieces of wrestling. They're going to integrate everything, just like the late, great Bruce Lee started doing before he died back in the 60s and in the early 70s. Bruce personified what mixed martial arts is today. So I see it not only as a sport, I see it as a martial arts movement integrated with the schools, and last, I see it as a fitness movement, because anyone who takes a mixed martial arts workout, just try one for 45 minutes going through the entire routines that they go through, I guarantee you, you'll be barely able to lift your arms and legs. That's what I see for the future, folks. Thank you very much, Forobours.